I'm so excited because today we have the opportunity to do some adjusting on the new Samsung 115 MicroRGB TV. And this is our first time we've gotten out to play with one of these things in the field. So let me show you what we found. We hooked up our Muridio test pattern generator. We have a Samsung reference HDR disc. We have our Calman and our Klein meter. So took some measurements. First of all, picture mode. Immediately we go to movie because that's the mode that is going to look best for watching movies or TV in general in a dark room, which is where we are. We're in a home theater environment. So once we do that, then we go to expert settings. Now, we already went in and calibrated the TV, so I'll show you what we did. We found that the TV was so crazy bright, we were actually measuring over 200 foot lamberts of peak brightness. So to get it down to a comfortable viewing level in a dark room, we have it a little hot, 35 foot lamberts. We had to bring the brightness down to 11 for that. Contrast, it turns out it wants to stay all the way up. Sharpness, we did quite a bit of looking at the image, and it turns out that any higher than 5, the picture starts to deteriorate. But we found that having a sharpness up from the factory default of 0 made it look really good. We did not change the defaults for color or tint. Auto, HDR mapping, we left that off. HDR tone mapping doesn't come into play unless you have an HDR image. We played around with the contrast enhancer. We really liked it off. We also played around with the shadow detail and the gamma, and we found that leaving the gamma factory default was at 1886, 0, shadow detail at 0. We got the best results at those defaults. Local dimming, we played around with. We get less blooming out of this TV if your local dimming is at low, and it was much more blooming at high, so we like it at low. Color space settings you would normally leave to auto. That means it will change to Rec 709 for SDR images, and it will go to DCI-P3 for HDR images. The Color Booster Pro in SDR, we found that this just saturated the colors a little bit better. You could leave it off, but if you are going to turn it on, go to high, don't go to low. Color tone could be on warm 1 or warm 2. Out of the box, one of them's a little bit hot on the color temperature, one of them's a little bit low from the reference of D6500. So what we ended up doing is we went into white balance, we went into a 2-point, we did go in and we changed our black levels a little bit and the white levels. Now, of course, we did have to use our Klein color meter to be able to get in, and we also touched up a couple of settings on the 20-point. But again, that's not something you can do without a color meter to measure it, so you wouldn't need to adjust those. So that's SDR. Let me go and put on an HDR image, and I'll show you the settings for HDR. We're using the Samsung HDR test disc and demo disc in order to go through these settings and also take measurements. I'm going to bring up the picture settings, and you'll see it's still in movie mode, of course, but we've gone now to the HDR memory. Now, what we found in HDR was that the brightness did have to come up a little bit higher than what we had for SDR, but not at the full 50. So we found 40 was a good match, so that in switching between SDR and HDR content, it didn't seem like one was too much brighter than the other. Sharpness we left at 5, color tint at factory defaults. HDR tone mapping actually comes up this time as active, and we didn't touch that. Contrast enhancer, we found that looked best off. This time, with the shadow detail and the gamma, we did raise them because we found the black levels, we were losing a lot of detail in the black. So we brought the shadow detail up to 3. The gamma, we brought that all the way up as well. Local dimming, we left at low, just like we did for SDR. And color space, you could have gone to custom. Now, it's choosing DCI-P3. Custom or auto would work. What we did on custom is we did modify the red point. Again, that's something we did with the meter. So most likely you'd leave it on auto if you have no way of taking measurements. Color Booster Pro, this time we found the color looked better with the Color Booster Pro off. If we turned that on, the colors just looked overly vibrant and not accurate. Color tone, warm 2 was the most accurate. Additionally, we applied our settings for the white balance as well. But again, if you can't take measurements, just leave it at warm 2 and you should be really accurate. Picture clarity settings. So for both SDR and HDR, picture clarity settings You want to take that out of auto and go to custom and have blur reduction at 10 and judder at 3. That's going to give you the most cinematic-like motion, especially with film content that was filmed at 24 frames a second, like you would see on Blu-ray or Kaleidoscape, or if you match content with Apple TV. That is really all of the settings in here. You will love this TV. It looks more like OLED than it does a traditional NeoQ LED. Having the separate red, green, and blue LEDs really make the colors pop. We actually measured 91% of Rec 2020 on this, which is unbelievable. And yeah, I mean, if you have an opportunity to install one of these, buy one of these, you will love it.